Next, Between Light and Shadow, in color.
Where are we?
You're in the middle. Between the two. The real and the shadow. Right now you're in a kind of limbo. You're neither here nor there.
Where are we?
Between light and shadow.
Greetings, scientists and lab assistants. You've turned your microscopes onto the genetic mutation known as Between Light and Shadow, the podcast versatile enough to wear a different face for every occasion. Suspicious? Duplicitous? Au contraire, mon frère. To survive and thrive in these treacherous modern times, one must be open to change. And to successfully adapt, one must not be leery of mutation. This week, we're looking at two Twilight Zone protagonists who might be considered mutants, as each possesses unique and highly useful talents for physical self-revisionism. They aren't X-Men necessarily. We'll call them Z-Men. You know, because Z is for... never mind, you get it. First up, The Four of Us Are Dying, which premiered on New Year's Day, 1960. It's a Rod Serling script loosely based on an unpublished short story by George Clayton Johnson called All of Us Are Dying. Well, it was unpublished at the time. It finally saw print in May 1982 in Twilight Zone magazine alongside Serling's teleplay. You know, to compare and contrast them and whatnot, kind of like what we do here on this podcast. Here's the thing. The short story and the teleplay have only one thing in common. Well, okay, two things. To keep it chronological, we'll start with the story. It's not very long, so I'm just going to read the whole thing to you. Gather around, kids. It's story time. After this, we'll have a snack and then a nap. All of Us Are Dying by George Clayton Johnson. He drove into the strange new town, parked the car in front of the hotel on Main Street, and climbed out. "Sam," said a voice. "Sam Wingate." A heavy-set man in a dark suit was bustling toward him with his hand outstretched. His response was automatic. He clapped the man on the back and pumped his hand. "It's good to see you again," he said fervently. "I'm in a hurry now, but I'll look you up when I finish." "I'm in the book, Sam," said the man, and grinned. He entered the hotel. At the cigar counter, he stopped to buy a pack of cigarettes. The girl behind the glass case smiled warmly as she turned toward him. Seeing his face, the smile died. "It's Fred, isn't it?" she said. "Fred Black." He looked at her, not saying anything. "You look strange," she said. "Didn't you expect me to remember you?" He remained quiet, searching her face. "Did you expect me to forget the things you said? The promises you made?" "Of course not," he said. "I don't understand how you would dare come back here after everything that happened." "And yet," he said, "here I am." "Yes," she said, "here you are." He reached out to touch her hand where it rested on the glass case. She drew it back. He tried a tentative smile. She flushed and moistened her lips with her tongue. "There is a reason why I came back." His eyes traveled boldly over her body. "It's too late," she said, looking away. "Perhaps not," he said. Her eyes met his, becoming large and moist, before she turned away to busy herself with the stock behind the counter. He walked out of the hotel. At the Wagon Wheel Cafe where he went to lunch, the waitress came up to the table briskly. "Ben," she said. "Ben Hoffmeyer." He pushed a smile onto his lips and looked up. "Well," she said, bending over him, "when did you get in town?" She was close enough for him to smell the clean soap smell of her skin. "Just arrived," he said. "Where's Evie? Have you still got that diner at Grosse Pointe?" "Here, here," he said easily. "One thing at a time." She swiped at the table with a damp cloth, rubbing her body against his shoulder. While she talked, his mind was busy sorting out the words, the tones, the inflections, weighing them, assigning them values. "I left Evie behind this time. You know how it is." "Sure," she said. "Do you remember the awful way she acted when she found us together?" Her hands brushed his on the dark tabletop. "That's the first time I got fired from a job in my whole life." "Forget about Evie," he said. "Sure," she said. "Now you just sit here while I bring you the special. For you, it's on the house." She swirled away in a rustle of starched clothing. He saw a man eyeing him from a counter stool. "And what's your special guilt?" he thought. On his way out, he waved at the waitress. "I get off at 8, she said. Back at the hotel, he smiled at the girl behind the cigar counter. She turned away coldly. He deliberated with himself for a time before crossing to the registration desk. "One single," he said. In his room, he stripped off his coat and shirt. He picked up the telephone and asked to be connected with the cigar counter. He listened to the connection being made. "This is Fred," he said into the mouthpiece. He lowered his voice to a husky whisper. "I have something to tell you, if you'll listen. Will you meet me someplace?" He held the receiver to his ear, listening, while a smile grew on his face. He replaced the instrument in his cradle, lay back on the bed, and looked at the ceiling for a while before falling asleep. It was getting dark. Through the window, he could see the sign winking on and off. "Bar, bar, bar." He took out his wallet and checked its contents. He saw that he was getting short on funds. He put on his shirt and coat, ran a comb through his hair, and went out. In the lobby, the cigar counter was closed. As he entered the bar, he paused to get his bearings. To his left was a long bar. He saw the girl from the cigar counter. She sat at the far end, a drink in front of her. To his right were booths with small tables between them and the bar. In the back were the restrooms and a small office. The jukebox ran deafeningly. He walked along the bar holding his face carefully, relaxed, listening to the wash of sound. "Hey, isn't that Mike Grover?" "Who?" "You remember Mike, the dispatcher?" He steered his way closer to the table. "Nah, that doesn't look anything like him." "Ah, that's Grover, all right. Hey, Mike!" He looked up as though startled. He let the smile spread over his face as he came up to the table. 3 roughly dressed men sat around a half-empty bottle of Old Crow. "Say," he said, "where did you guys come from? How long has it been?" "Pull up a chair, Mike. You remember Eddie Walsh, and this here is Barney Koenig. Fellas, this is Mike Grover, the meanest dispatcher who ever worked for the Union Pacific." "Have a drink," said Eddie. "Harvey ain't got no manners." Eddie pushed an empty glass in front of him. He sloshed liquor into the glass. "You still with the UP?" "You know what they say about old soldiers," he said. He wondered if anyone at the table had money. "Boy, we had some times together, didn't we?" said Harvey. "Remember the time we took old Swenson the super out and got him tight? I bet he's still wondering how he come to wake up at Essie Kuppenheimer's." "Yeah," he said, smiling. "And the next day he tells his old lady that he had to go to Denver on business." Harvey laughed boisterously. He smiled brightly, and then let the expression change to one of sadness. "Something wrong, Mike?" "I just remembered," he said sadly. "I was supposed to stop at the bank this afternoon and make a withdrawal. Completely slipped my mind. I've got some things to do tonight, and I haven't got a cent on me." "How much do you need?" asked Harvey. "I've got some dough. I can let you have it back tomorrow." "Will 20 be enough?" He looked doubtful. Harvey had his wallet out. "Here, take $30. You can leave it with the bartender, and I can pick it up tomorrow night." He took the money with a pained expression on his face. "I appreciate this, Harvey." "It's all right. Seeing you was worth it. Man, some of the times we had, those were the days." He slapped him on the shoulder. "Have another drink?" "Next time, huh? It's getting late, and I've got a lot to do." "If you can't be good, be careful," said Harvey slyly. "Don't spend it all at Essie's." As he came abreast of the girl, she slipped lightly from the stool. Her hair was brushed away from her face, and she looked shy and troubled. Fred, she said tentatively. He put his arm protectively about her shoulder. Let's go where we can talk. He moved her toward the door. Outside, the brisk breeze came down on them. She shivered, looking up at him, searching his face. You've changed, Fred, she said. Yes, he said. He took her arm and began to walk toward the hotel. In his room, she turned to him, her arms going around his neck. Oh, Fred, she said. Yes, yes, he said huskily. He bent over her, his hands touching her, cupping her. Almost feverishly, she pulled away. When you left, I thought I'd go crazy. I kept telling myself that you would come back, and when you didn't, I began to hate you. Alone at night, I worked out the things I would say to you if I ever met you again. I began to look in the mirror, wondering what there was about me that made you leave. I'd take off my clothes and look at myself in the mirror. It wasn't that, he said. He pulled her to him again, his hand expertly finding the zipper on her dress. He kissed her cheek and her lips. And then I thought, maybe I did something wrong. I remembered our nights together, recalling each detail, remembering each touch and each kiss. Her breath came warmly in his ear. Nor that, he said. The dress fell away. He pressed his face against her neck, tasting her flesh. And then I thought that maybe there was another woman, she said breathlessly. Her hands climbed up and down his spine. None as dear as you, he whispered. He picked her up and carried her to the bed. You won't ever leave me again? She asked tremulously. His clothing fell in a heap beside the bed. Never, he said, and then he joined her on the clean sheets. I was wrong, she said at last, in a small, subdued voice touched with awe and wonder. You haven't changed at all. You're still the same Fred Black that I remember so very well. Lying there, he tried to remember how it had all started. He'd done all the normal boyish things the other kids did, and then he was 12 and things changed. Not with the kids, because they knew who he was and couldn't be fooled, but everything changed with the grown-ups. They were always confusing him with the other kids. They'd call up his mother with strange stories. Are you calling Mrs. Kelling a liar? His mother would ask, a switch in her hand. She saw you and that awful Grenfield boy breaking her milk bottles. How many times have I told you to keep away from him? But, Mom, you know better than that, his mother would say, and then she would switch him. One night, standing before the mirror in his bathroom, he looked long and searchingly into his face and discovered his secret. If he held his head cocked so, he looked like Charlie Bryce. If he smiled thus, he looked like Billy Warner. If he frowned and lowered his eyebrows, he was Pud. At first, he had been delighted with the discovery. He'd go down the street wearing his mask, and people would say, Hi, Pud, or Hey, Billy, and then he'd smile and hug himself. Suddenly, he was 16, and all this was kid stuff. He wanted to be noticed for himself, not Charlie or Pud. He'd be careful not to cock his head to the side or lower his eyebrows, and then strangers would say, Hey, Keith, or Hello, Wendell. He'd then stand still on the sidewalk, trying to remember his name. He found that when he corrected people who wrongly identified him, it hurt their feelings. They would flush and stammer, and sometimes they would get angry. What did it matter, he told himself. If they got pleasure out of thinking he was someone else, why spoil it for them? At the end of each day, his face stiff from nodding and smiling, he'd go home and, in his dreams, he would hear a flood of voices calling him Jack, or Bart, or Brad. One day a man walked up to him in front of Seeger's clothing store and said, Here, Evans, here's that 20 I owe you. He pressed a bill into his hands and walked away. The next day he packed up his clothes and left town. He was 21. He discovered he had old friends in every town, always good for a free meal, a place to stay, or a loan of money. It was fun. Except on those bad days when he'd sit in a drab hotel room dreaming of a job and a family and an identity that wouldn't shift and flow like mercury. One day he bought a little black book just to keep track of the loans and the gifts, to find that they averaged $10,000 a year. Why be a sap? Where else could he make that kind of money with his education and skill? He remembered it all and fell asleep thinking of the next morning, when he would get in his car and drive away to another town where it would begin all over again. When he woke, the girl was gone. Pausing through the hotel lobby, he saw her standing behind the glass case. A look of disappointment creased her face as he went by without looking at her. He had breakfast at the Wagon Wheel Cafe, listening to the waitress. He made glib conversation while he ate heartily. Driving out of town, he saw the service station. He cramped the wheel to the left, driving across the white line, and pulled up beside the pumps. The attendant came down from inside, moving slowly, peering toward him. "Fill it up," he said, and stopped. "You!" screamed the attendant. "Arthur Danluck! I've been searching for you for 10 years!" He felt himself being hauled out into the driveway. His head glanced off of the pump as he fell to his knees. "No!" he thought foggily. Terrified, he tried to roll away from the kicking feet. The attendant had wrenched the gasoline hose from its socket in the pump and had the heavy nozzle poised high in the air. "I swore I'd kill you," mouthed the attendant, stretching up on his tiptoes. He brought the nozzle down. It caught him crushingly across the shoulders. He stiffened convulsively, his face gone dead, becoming a strange face, a distinctive face. "Please," he sobbed, "I'm not who you think. My name is... He searched vainly for the name. Who was he? He didn't know at first, and then he did. Too late. The nozzle flashed high and started its downward rush. He was Ben Hoffmeyer. He was Fred Black. He was Mike Grover. He was Arthur Danluck. And all of them were dying. So it seems whoever he encounters sees him as a person from the past that they've missed, that they most want to see. So this is his life, going from town to town, living off the mistaken recognition of strangers. He did have an identity once, a name, parents, friends. Did his own face vanish as he grew from a boy to a man? Who does he see when he looks in a mirror? He comes off a bit as a tragic character. He didn't ask for this, despite the benefits he's reaping. It's clearly a curse. Yes, he is taking advantage of people, but he isn't committing crimes. And if he is, it isn't depicted in the story. He's not what I would call a true bad guy. Again, he doesn't have a choice. I guess he could wear a disguise of some sort, or wrap up his head like the Invisible Man, if he wanted to prevent people from mistaking him for others, but he doesn't. So, okay, yeah, he is responsible for whatever pain he might cause, but I'm still not sure he deserves the violent end that he meets. But anyway, that's the story. Short, sweet, punchline kind of ending, perfect for the Twilight Zone. But it hadn't been published, so how did it find its way into Rod Serling's office and onto the show? Mark Scott Zickery provides an interesting bit of history in the Twilight Zone Companion. Turn to page 86 of the second edition if you want to read along. Early in 1959, George Clayton Johnson, a young writer and friend of Charles Beaumont, wrote a story entitled All of Us Are Dying, about a young man who capitalizes on the fact that people see him as whomever they most want to see in the world. His downfall occurs when he pulls into a gas station, and the attendant recognizes him as a man he's wanted to kill for 10 years. Johnson submitted the story to a certain agent. After the agent read it, Johnson recalls, he scrubbed out the title with a ballpoint pen and wrote in Rubberface. He then sent it to Rod Serling. Serling liked Johnson's original title and the idea of a man who could change his face. He bought the story, entitling his teleplay adaptation The Four of Us Are Dying. What he then did was to write a totally different story of his own. Serling's version was the 17th Twilight Zone episode produced and the 13th aired. It was brought to life under the watchful eye of John Brom, who directed more episodes than anyone else, a total of 12. Now, this one was his third. Before this, he did Time Enough at Last and Judgment Night, neither of which we've covered on the show. Yet. But we will, kids. He also directed Season 2's Shadow Play, which we looked at a couple of weeks ago. So anyway, The Four of Us Are Dying was first broadcast on January 1st, 1960, and it goes a little something like this. We see a guy walking down a city street, surrounded by neon signs, crime jazz dancing around tilted angled shots. Maybe the phrase hadn't been coined yet, but this is film noir. Guy's got a suitcase and he's checking into the hotel reel. But what we're about to witness is quite unreal. Serling tells us that his name is Arch Hammer and that he's a low-down sumbitch. Once in his room, he has himself a shave. And what a baller, he's shaving with a goddamn cigarette hanging out of his mouth. The camera pans over to the mirror and boom, it's a different guy. Well, same guy, but a completely different face. Turns out he can adjust his appearance to look like anybody he wants, which is a pretty amazing talent. Now, we don't know how he can do this. Serling tells us that he discovered it at a very young age, so maybe he was born with it, or maybe it developed during adolescence. Is he even human? Is he an alien? Like the shape-shifting alien bounty hunter from the X-Files? And speaking of the X-Files, we'll come back to that in a while. So he can mimic anyone he wants at will. Well, anyone male. As far as we can tell, he can only change his face and hair and voice, which is weird, but we'll come back to that. Now, it'd be pretty awesome if he could shapeshift between the sexes, but I guess 1960 was a bit early for gender fluidity. So, wow, what a cool ability. Think of what you could do with that. Well, okay, I guess no matter what you did, whether good or evil, it's still duplicitous. But you could do good things, I think. I mean, I can't think of any off the top of my head. And neither can Arch Hammer, apparently. He's arrived in town with a pocket full of obituaries and a get-rich-quick scheme in mind. Classy. I can see a total of 6 newspaper clippings in that little pile. Now, is that supposed to represent 6 different newspaper stories about 6 different deaths? Because here's the thing. If you look closely, only 2 of them are unique. There are 3 copies of each. Gangland killing, times 3. Musician killed, times 3. He apparently tore the same 2 obituaries out of 3 different copies of the same newspaper. Or is this another one of those things where you wouldn't have noticed it on the tiny little TV screens circa 1960? But in this age of high-def big screens, invisible details are now plain as day? There's no way to know at this late date. So it means one of 2 things. Either Arch Hammer's plan involves impersonating 6 different dead people, which would be impossible to depict in 25 minutes, or he's a bit OCD and needs 3 of everything. But if that were the case, he'd have 3 cigarettes hanging out of his mouth instead of 1. I don't know. Anyway, cut to commercial, come back, and we're still in the hotel room. Arch paws through the pile for a bit, then picks 1. That suggests that they're all supposed to be different. He stuffs it into his pocket and heads out. And now we're back on the street, out among the endless array of neon signs, canted camera angles, and frenetic jazz underscore. He pauses to look longingly at a strip club, then very obviously does a weird crouching move, presumably to adjust his pants to hide something. He then passes a couple making out on a bench and stops to perv out on them for a bit. Man, this guy needs to get laid. And maybe that's the motivation behind part 1 of his evil plan.
So thanks for the cheer. I hope you didn't mind my bending your ear. This torch that I found must be drowned, or it just might explode. Make it 1 for my baby and 1 more for the road.
The Lonely Club. God help me, that's the name of it. And it fits, since a beautiful chanteuse is singing 1 for my baby and 1 for the road. A jazz standard that's been done by all the greats. Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Etta James, Perry Como, Lena Horne, Marvin Gaye, Sammy Davis Jr., Tony Bennett, Iggy Pop. Wait, what? Seriously?
Well, it's 2:45. There's no one in the joint. It's just you and me. So, set 'em up, Joe. I've got a little story I think you should know. We're drinking, my friends. We'll drink to the end of life's brief episode. Make it one for my baby and one for the road.
Okay, well, that was weird. Anyway, so this is Maggie, and she's pretty clearly sad. But damn, it's a beautiful kind of sad. Arch watches as she finishes her song and moves to a quiet table near the back and has a drink. Her eyes go wide, and the camera dollies in on her for a close shot. She's pretty clearly shocked to see whoever's approaching.
If you don't drink well, don't drink.
Johnny.
And this is Johnny Foster, the dead trumpet player from the newspaper clipping. Well, it's Arch Hammer impersonating him. What comes next is a long conversation positively rife with hipster slang and cool cat lingo. Here's a sampling.
You're always a funny guy, Johnny. Way out, Johnny Foster. Well, are you satisfied with the reaction?
Morning becomes you, Mag.
Me and Electra.
So Johnny Foster died when his car tangled with a train. Kind of like what almost happened to Inger Stevens in The Hitchhiker.
Arch, as Johnny, tells her it was a case of mistaken identity, and he's decided to use it to his advantage. He's had it with the rat race and is blowing town, and he wants Maggie to tag along. Naturally, she's game. She's to meet him at the bus station later that night. On his way out, he's recognized by the trumpet player who presumably replaced him in the house band. He follows him outside. Arch stands in the shadow and pulls out a cigarette. The guy offers him a light, and in the flickering glow of the match, sees Arch Hammer's face, not Johnny's.
I'll take the light, but you got the wrong guy.
Back to the hotel room, to another newspaper clipping. This is the gangland killing one. The deceased pictured is Virgil Sterrig. Arch changes his face to match, and we cut to commercial. Back from commercial, and we are in Marty Saul's office? You know, from the 16mm Shrine? The two episodes were shot a little over a week apart, so it makes sense that they'd reuse the same set. Here, it's the swanky pad of a crime boss named Pennell. Now, he's enjoying a bottle of beer and watching some TV. Archhammer shows up as Virgil Sterrig, and Pennell is even more wide-eyed than Maggie was. He stands up and accidentally knocks his beer against the TV screen, which shatters it. Were TVs that fragile back then? Or were beer bottles that thick and powerful?
Virgil, this is the happiest day of my life.
This is the happiest day of your life. How come you look like somebody just stuck lemon juice in your beer, huh?
Well, I guess Hefeweizen wasn't a thing yet. Or Corona either. So Pennell and Verge were partners in an unspecified crime that was supposed to make them both rich. However...
Now, if you could have kept me in the river, a cold, clammy little item without a voice, then you could have been happy. But this is one double-cross, Mr. Pennell, that came back to bite you.
Virg, you got me wrong, Virg.
I held up my end of the bargain, and instead of the payoff, all I got was the river. And that river was cold, Mr. Pennell. Far too cold for this time of the year. Lousy swimming, Mr. Pennell. especially when you're almost out of blood.
Verge.
I brought back a satchel for you, Mr. Pennell. There was a lot of money in it. It was a real risky job. Now I figure my cut is more than a cold swim.
Verge was supposed to get 20%, but now he's gonna take it all. And like an idiot, Pennell tells him there's an envelope full of cash in his desk, which Verge helps himself to.
Verge.
Yeah?
Did somebody fish you out before?
Did somebody fish me out before I'd had it? Is that the question? No, Mr. Pennell. That's not the way it happened at all. I'm a ghost.
Verge ducks out and Pennell sends 2 goons after him. They corner him in a long, dark alley. He panics, trying to think of a different face. Why can't he just change back to his own? He sees a tattered poster advertising a boxing match, which includes a face, Andy Marshak.
What did I do? Why are you guys trying to finger me? I mean, what goes? I didn't do nothing to you guys.
Nothing, buddy. We thought you were somebody else.
So he's off the hook. But then an old man sees him.
I don't remember you, old man. How do I know you?
How do you know me? As a son should know his father. What kind of a game are you playing, Andy?
I'm your son?
Awkward. So the old man lets Andy, actually Arch Hammer, have it for the shitty way he's treated his family. Arch pushes the poor old guy down and returns to his room to pack his stuff. But there's a detective waiting for him.
Arch Hammer, huh? Detroit, Michigan.
I've never been here.
Of course you haven't. Neither was Henry Ford. Get down for a bunker wrap, Hammer. I gotta put you on the book. You can make 2 calls when you get to the station.
Can I get my coat?
Be my guest. Where is it, Hammer? Up on the roof?
In the closet.
This is a great moment. He turns to put his coat on, and when he turns back, he's still Arch Hammer. It's a nice misdirect. They head down to the lobby, and Arch pulls the classic spin the revolving door too many times to disorient the other guy routine. When he comes out, he's Andy Marshak again.
What do you think you're doing? I'm sorry. Did you see a guy come out of there?
No.
Ha! Off the hook again. He lights up a celebratory smoke, and then his eyes go wide for a change.
Hey, old man.
You got such a debt, Andy. You owe for so many years. You owe for so many things. And now, you pay off, son.
Hey, now, wait a minute. Now, wait a minute. You got the wrong guy. I swear to you, you got the wrong guy.
I got the right guy.
No, please. Please, wait. Put the gun down. I'll show you. I'll show you, honest. But I gotta think. I gotta concentrate. Just put the gun down. You'll see. I gotta concentrate.
That's a pretty well-staged shooting, the way he lurches as the bullet hits him and convulses as he slumps to the sidewalk. As he lays there dying, his face cycles through his various identities. Johnny Foster, Virgil Sterrig, Andy Marshak, and finally his own face. It reminds me of the Ray Bradbury short story The Martian, in which an alien empathetically takes on the appearance of others, and who ultimately displays its multitude of borrowed faces in its death throes. More recently, the T-1000 in Terminator 2 Judgment Day does the same thing while it dies. Serling gives us his closing thoughts, but the episode doesn't quite end there. We have time for a slow pan up past the murder scene, through the neon melange, up to the cityscape, and then up to the starry sky. It's atypical. Usually Serling says his piece and we're out. And one thing that's cool about anthology shows, you don't just get to tell different kinds of stories, you get to tell different kinds of stories in different styles. You take an episode like Mr. Denton on Doomsday, which we looked at last time, and it's a much slower moving episode. It's dark and somber. The way it's staged, the way it's shot, the way it's cut, it's low-key, brooding. Now, The Four of Us Are Dying, by contrast, is hyperkinetic. It's like, yeah, man, with the jazz music, very modern, very angular, sharp and twitchy, cracking dialogue. And the same people made both. They were very adept at switching up styles to present these very different kinds of stories. They're told in different visual languages, different musical languages. Now, The Four of Us Are Dying has a lot going for it, but it has its share of logic flaws too. At the top of that list is the obvious. Arch Hammer can change his face to be anyone he wants, and apparently that extends to his hair, but more importantly, it extends to his voice. How the hell is he able to mimic their voices? He doesn't know what they sound like. He also takes on the personality that goes with the face, which just adds to the ludicrousness. And another thing, he's mimicking these people based on grainy, two-dimensional newspaper photos. You don't get a lot of detail, but he's able to pull off completely convincing replications of their three-dimensional heads. And he also seems to inherit memories too, or at the very least, motivations. I understand that he wants to get the money from the crime boss, but he doesn't know the people he impersonates, much less the people in their lives. It's not like the newspaper article would have said, hey, Pinnell murdered his business partner and drowned him in the river, but he's got an envelope full of cash at his place. Or, dead trumpeter leaves behind smoking hot girlfriend who can be found at the lonely club singing sad songs. Would the newspaper story have even mentioned her? Plus, the clippings aren't even complete. If you freeze frame the Blu-ray, you can clearly see that most of the copy that accompanies the pictures isn't even there. Arch ripped them out without even trying to preserve all the text. So what is Arch's endgame here? I mean, I get the money grab from Pinnell, but beyond that, per Serling, he has a master plan to destroy some lives. Whose life is he ruining by deceiving Maggie? I mean, yeah, it's pretty fucked up what he's doing to her, but he seems intent on staying with her. Providing the grieving girlfriend with a surrogate is kinda altruistic in a skewed, dysfunctional way. So there are some holes, some questionable motivations, but you go with it because it's all about the vibe and the atmosphere. It's kind of like a jazz number. It just sort of takes you, and it improvises as it goes. There's a certain dream logic to it. Imagine yourself sitting in a smoky club, and there's live jazz playing, and as the players are playing, they're improvising. It's unique. It's never been quite this way before, and it won't be this way again. If you stop and pick it all apart from a traditional musical standpoint, you will probably find flaws. That key change won't work, or that note doesn't fit, whatever. You could see the seams, the cracks, the flaws. But in the moment, when the music is happening, you don't notice. You go with it. You're transported regardless. And which is more valid? A perfectly constructed, airtight story where every story beat, every word of dialogue, every plot point makes perfect sense? Or something that's messy, frenetic, organic, and maybe it doesn't quite jibe upon reflection when later analysis reveals the inconsistencies and the incongruities, but in the moment, it makes perfect sense. It did move you. It did transport you. Which is more valid? There's a certain dreamlike quality to The Four of Us Are Dying. You see it in the tilted camera angles, the heightened and unrealistic dialogue, and you especially see it in that endless sea of neon lights that clearly isn't real. They're just sort of everywhere, overlapping. Lonely Club, cold beer, pool room, wine port, club bonanza. It's a visual clamor of voices, like in a dream. There's also the tremendously convenient way that everything in the episode seems to take place within a few blocks. Arch's hotel, the Club Lonely, Pinnell's pad, the magazine stand. But isn't that how it works in dreams? You're in one place and then suddenly another. It's a dream, so it doesn't have to all make sense.
As far as I can tell, this man has a thin stratum of voluntary muscle tissue underpinning the entire dermal layer of his skin. That's not normal. This man's body is quite a scientific specimen, and thankfully it's preserved and intact. In other words, there are 654 muscles in the human body, and this man essentially has 655.
Could that somehow be related to his having a tail?
Possibly. It could be a linked gene birth defect.
What would be the purpose of this muscle?
You got me, Mulder.
If this musculature underlies the entire skin, then maybe it could be utilized to remold the skin's shape and texture, which would go a long way to explaining why we're looking for a man who can appear to be his own father, or anyone else for that matter.
But if you do need a concrete explanation as to how Arch Hammer changes his face, the answer may have come to us by way of an episode of The X-Files 37 years later. In the episode Small Potatoes, Mulder and Scully encounter Eddie Van Blunt, a janitor who seems to possess the same transformative ability. And surprise, the episode was written by Vince Gilligan. Now, we already know that some of his X-Files scripts were directly inspired by the Twilight Zone, since he's an unabashed fan. Perhaps this is another example of that. Serling does tell us in his opening narration that Hammer can twitch a muscle, move a jaw, concentrate on the cast of his eyes, and he can change his face. He can change it into anything he wants. Sounds kind of like Eddie Van Blunt, doesn't it? The engine driving the episode isn't the story, or the mechanics behind the story, or the characters populating it. It's the feel of it, the atmosphere of it, the music of it, and it all sort of infuses the narrative, coalesces around it, and as such, strict coherence isn't required. The story is being told using dream logic set to jazz. David Lynch does this exact same thing in Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive. It's a bit dizzying, a bit delirious, and absolutely thrilling. This is the first Twilight Zone to stray this far out in terms of how it tells its stories. And it's structured like a song too. Each scene is a verse, and the chorus comes each time Arch Hammer walks the streets, shot from odd angles, surrounded by neon, the music growing in intensity. This wasn't something that developed in post-production either. Serling planned it this way from the beginning. The opening scene of the teleplay reads as follows. Exterior street, night, angle shot looking up toward a man as he walks toward the camera. On either side are flashing neon signs, bar signs, burlesque signs, dance halls, etc. There's blaring, dissonant jazz that plays under the entire moment as the man continues to walk. And then a few shots later, interior hotel room, night. The staccato pace of the previous scene is now slowed down, and the mood is no longer stylized. There's an interesting difference between Serling's teleplay and the finished episode. Remember that cool misdirect I mentioned before when Arch Hammer goes to get his coat, then doesn't change his face when you think he's going to? Well, in the teleplay, he does change his face while his back is turned. He becomes Johnny Foster again, which creates just enough confusion for him to slip past the detective and run out of the hotel. The revolving door bit doesn't happen, but when the detective catches up with him outside, he's now Andy Marshak again. Much of the episode's propulsive energy comes from the original music score by Jerry Goldsmith. It's the first overtly jazz score composed specifically for the show, but it won't be the last. I think I threatened in an earlier episode that I might do a special installment of the podcast devoted to Twilight Zone jazz. Well, let's just say I'm still considering it, baby. Now, in the 80s, Varese Saraband released 5 soundtrack albums of original music from the series, including several jazz pieces. Volume 4, seek it out, fellow hepcats. But The Four of Us Are Dying was sadly not included, and to this day, it's still never been released in any audio format. No records, no tapes, no CDs, no MP3s, no nothing. The Twilight Zone first started appearing on DVD way back in 1998, in individual volumes with 3 or 4 episodes each, apparently before the concept of season sets occurred to anybody. There were 45 individual volumes, and they were really bare bones, just the episodes and nothing else. But starting with volume 28, well, something changed. In the year 2000, they started isolating the music tracks as Easter eggs, which was insanely cool for a TZ music buff like me. But by then, they were 2/3 of the way through the series, so it was too late for the vast majority of the original scores. In 2004, the series was released on DVD again, this time in quote-unquote definitive edition sets, one for each season, and they were stacked to the brim with special features, including, a bunch more isolated music tracks, including Goldsmith's score for The Four of Us Are Dying. Now, when the show bowed on Blu-ray in 2010, even more isolated music tracks were made available. So, there are 55 episodes of The Twilight Zone that have original music. The rest use pre-existing library music. 20 of those original scores were covered in the 5 soundtrack albums, leaving 35 original scores unreleased. The definitive DVD and Blu-ray sets feature isolated music scores for all of those 20, plus an additional 29, leaving only 6 original scores from the entire series still unavailable. I mean, yeah, you have to take some extra steps to add them to your iTunes or Google Play library, but if you have the right equipment and the technical know-how, it's a breeze. Oh, and lots of the library-scored episodes are also isolated, so you can amass a treasure trove of selections from the cavernous CBS Music Library while you're at it. And who do we have to thank for this bumper crop of Twilight Zone music? Well, CBS and Image Entertainment, of course, but who actually performed the arduous task of bringing the series into the high-definition realm, isolated music and all? One name: Stephen Pickard. Back when the original single-volume releases were coming to an end in 2001, I posted the following over on Talking Herman, the discussion forum section of the Bernard Herrmann Society website. Since this is presumably the final TZ DVD, unless Image decides to remaster the first 25 or so volumes, I'd like to personally thank Mr. Pickard once again for his stellar work on these discs. If you'll recall, he's the man directly responsible for bringing us the isolated TZ scores, and for this, he's a true hero for any serious Herman collector. Actually, he's a hero for fans of Twilight Zone music in general, Herman or otherwise. And 15 years later, I'm still just as grateful. And kids, with me on the phone is none other than the man himself, Mr. Stephen Pickard. Stephen, welcome to Between Light and Shadow.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor having you here with us. So, Image Entertainment started releasing The Twilight Zone on DVD in 1998 or thereabouts. And they were better than VHS, but not that much better. But then suddenly, midway through, starting with, I think it was the 28th volume, the episodes suddenly looked and sounded a lot better. And some of them even had isolated music tracks. And it's been suggested to me that you may have had something to do with that. How did you become involved with that?
Well, first of all, my involvement with Image Entertainment goes back about 20 years. I got involved with them. One day I was in Days Video in Studio City, and I happened to be talking about The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes with somebody there, and which I worked on in post-production when I was working at Pinewood Studios in England. And they mentioned to me that they were doing a Laserdisc edition, and recommended that I should maybe contact somebody there. So I got in touch with, finally spoke to somebody named Bruce Venezia, who has an executive position there at the time. And he said that, yeah, well, they're doing the telecine transfer. And he just said to me that you should get in touch with the facility, I can't remember the name of it, and speak to Dennis Rood, who's supervising the transfer. So I contacted him, and he invited me down there. And ever since, we've been close friends. And anyway, back to the Twilight Zone situation. I suddenly got an offer to do some of the sound transfers right in the middle of that project. That particular project, Twilight Zone, I wasn't there in the beginning, but somehow I kind of got involved somewhere along the way, and I did a few transfers. I got the masters I got from, I guess, from CBS were 3-channel magnetic 35 millimeter magnetic masters, separate dialogue, music, and effects. So that's how they would have accessed the music, a mix track, meaning that it dips, unfortunately, when you have dialogue.
Right.
So
so they brought you in partway through.
Yeah.
Now, were they, to your knowledge, were they already planning the subsequent definitive edition sets, but they had kind of decided to finish out the existing individual volumes first?
That, I don't know. I'm not sure about that, and I was not aware that that was forthcoming.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of came as a sort of a big surprise,
So, okay, so you're brought into the project. You start. Again, lots of the episodes had already been released.
That's right. Yeah. Well, these were old. Sorry, the picture masters they were using, I believe, were pretty old masters. Mm-hmm. Not quite sure what format they were on, but I know that they went back a bit. They weren't done from scratch, especially for that particular project.
I remember when the very first DVDs came out, and I had already been collecting the show on VHS, and I remember thinking that there wasn't that big of a difference between the two. In fact, I remember writing kind of an angry email to, I think it was Panasonic, who was originally doing them on DVD when that first started, and they never answered me. But I think I was fairly rude, so that's probably good that they didn't bother with me. But again, when I think it was, and again I keep saying this, I think it was volume 28. It suddenly, they looked and sounded a lot better. So maybe talk us through a little bit of the technical process.
Yeah. Well, if you're referring to the the season sets of the DVD.
Okay, so they brought you back.
Yeah. Well, what happened was there was some, but the very early DVDs weren't mastered from scratch. What I mean is that we weren't accessing the original picture material and doing transfers. That came later. The early ones were just volumes with scattered episodes, and then now we're talking about the season sets that were brought out on standard definition DVD, right?
Right, the definitive editions, right?
Yeah. Okay. Definitive. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Well, the steps were, first of all, we kind of auditioned the facility we wanted to use, and we ended up using a facility. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. It was right in Burbank. And then what it is, we arrive at the facility, and this is Dennis and I, because the plan was that we both were going to split the episodes. He would take on some and I would take on some more, and to get through the quantity that was ahead of us. Then the negatives, the picture negatives, were already there, and they will be loaded on telecine, and the 35 picture negative would then be reversed, so you'd see a positive image on the monitor. Okay. And then we go through, cut by, shot by shot, and grade it. And then when that's been done, I mean, that could take anywhere from, a couple of hours to 3-4 hours, depending on the number of shots in each reel, which run an average of about 8 or 9 minutes. Okay. And then what they do, they take that reel, which is the original negative, the original picture negative, and take it downstairs to a special cleaning machine because as you're going through grading, the film is going backwards and forwards in the telecine machine, and it seems to pick up a lot of dust. You see. And so at the time, we're concerned with getting the picture balance from shot to shot, getting the grading right, because it's completely what you call untimed, and you have to get the day for night scenes done right and everything. And so anyway, the reel goes to the cleaner, and then when it comes back, it then in real time is laid down to a tape master. You see, and in actual fact, we were doing high def 1080p transfers. Then they weren't being done in standard definition. Those early ones were actually being done in 1080p. This is back in like 2004, and then we just go on doing that episode after episode. And after a few days or a week, Dennis realized that he had a lot of responsibilities at Image Entertainment that he was falling back on. So he turned around and told me that if I could take it on from then on. So I said, yeah, sure. And it was a bit difficult because I was doing a full-time job at Disney at the time, and but I still wanted to do it because it's an opportunity of a lifetime. And so I'm so grateful to Image and to Dennis for giving me this opportunity. So what I would do is I would finish work around 4:00, and then I go straight to this facility. I was lucky that I was working in Burbank, so it made it easy. It took about 10 minutes to get to the facility, and then I would remain there until about 9:00 in the evening. And that's the picture side of things. Now the sound, I was transferring at home, so I was able to access the sound material, which was mostly on 35 full coat magnetic 3-stripe, which is dialogue effects and music, and half-inch tape, which had the same format on there, dialogue effects and music. So we were able to do the isolated scores, but there were a few scattered episodes that unfortunately we only had optical. So the episodes that don't have isolated scores on, this is the reason, because there's only what you call a composite track, optical track, where all the dialogue, music and effects are all locked together in one track. Right. You see, now I was doing those, all the sound I was doing at home, except for the optical tracks, which were done at the facility. And I at home I had purchased a 35mm playback machine, which could play back anything from single track to 6-track. And then I had an 8-channel D88 digital recorder, and I'd transfer those onto the tapes, and once those tapes were done, I'd pass those over to Image Entertainment, and Dennis would then synchronize the sound with the picture, with the graded picture that would have been done, a few days prior to that. And then that same procedure was done over and over again until it was finished about several months later. I can't really remember right now exactly how long it took, but it did take quite a long time.
And for that entire period, I mean, sounds like you were living, breathing, sleeping the Twilight Zone. If you're working on it,
Yes, that's quite true.
But after your day job, and then you're taking it home with you.
That's right. Yeah, so I had very little time to myself. That was quite an ongoing thing, but I really enjoyed it. I didn't feel a pressure or anything. It was, really was an opportunity of a lifetime thing, something that hasn't happened since then.
Yeah, it's really amazing, just the attention lavished on this show. I mean, which, tickles me to no end because it's my favorite TV show of all time. But it's rare to see this kind of stuff done for a TV show. I mean, there are other impressive packages. I mean, they did a really nice job on the original Star Trek series. That's a nice Blu-ray set. The Fugitive DVD set is pretty nice.
Yeah,
But
that's CBS again, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So we have the definitive edition DVDs, and then we start getting the Blu-ray sets. Now, are the Blu-rays the same 1080p masters as the definitive DVDs, or were they done all over again?
Well, I'm not quite sure how I should respond to that, because when the Blu-rays were released, they wanted to keep the illusion that these were new transfers.
Sure.
You see, but I don't think it really matters now after the fact, because see, these the Blu-ray transfers were actually the ones done for the standard definition set. You know, we did 1080p transfers. They were down res to standard def for the standard definition release, and then when the Blu-rays came along, they were the same transfers that were done about, let's see, the Blu-ray releases were about 2010, and the definitive ones were released around about 2004 or 5, I believe, around the same time as the transfers were actually done.
Oh yeah, and I'm certainly wouldn't complain. The difference between the two is profound. I mean, the definitive DVDs were great for the time, but once the Blu-rays came out, I mean, it's almost staggering how good it looks and sounds.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'd like to add is that when I was doing the transfers, or this is an opinion shared by both Dennis and I, because we both think alike in the intention of how we want the finished product to look. And that is the fact that there was no processing done. I made sure there was no edge enhancement done, and also I made sure that there was no there's a terminology called clipping or crushing. Clipping means, burning out highlights, very bright areas in the picture, and then the very dark areas of the picture. If you go too dark, it goes into what you call crush, where you don't get any more shadow detail. So I wanted to make sure that I got a perfect grayscale. And so you could pick out every detail. I mean, you had to make exceptions with things like headlights and any bright, street lights, where we couldn't bring them out of the clip, but I got it as low as I could get it. Yeah. So it wouldn't clip. But as I say, but what I'm trying to say is that the fact that there was no processing technology at the time applied. There was nothing to to attract attention. The fact that it was done so many years before. So when the Blu-rays came out, these were original raw transfers, done carefully, and then the Blu-rays. I wasn't present when they were doing the Blu-rays. There was a degree of tweaking done, but I don't know to what degree, because I haven't actually done a direct comparison between the Blu-rays and the standard def versions that I still have.
That might be a fun project at some point.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there shouldn't be too much difference, but I know there are, probably a few differences, but not enough to say, oh boy, this doesn't look as good as, standard def, or vice versa.
So the new thing now is 4K. Do you foresee the Twilight Zone going through another remastering to take advantage of that?
Well, it would be nice, but it's a shame that when we're doing the original transfers, that technology was not available to us.
Right.
We only had, 1080p was considered definitive.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's amazing how times change, and now we've got 2K, 4K scanning. they don't, they very rarely load the film anymore and grade it as you go along. It's now scanned, and then and they make sure there's nothing clipping or crushing, and then that tape master, which is done from the scanned 2K or 4K, off of the film. Right. They tell us any from that, you see.
You said that you had worked for Disney. Can you talk a little bit about that? What did you do there?
Yeah, well, originally I was hired at Disney back in around about where are we now? 1988, 87 or 88. I was working at Filmation, and unfortunately they went bankrupt. And I got a call from Disney. I had done an off few days there, and I went and worked in sound transfer. And I found myself there for 22 years. And during that time, initially I worked in sound transfer, which the experience in sound transfer helped me a lot when I did the sound for Twilight Zone, because when you're handling 35 mag masters, you've got to have basic knowledge about playback alignment of the machine itself. And then when you load the magnetic master on the machine, you've got to know how to align the master to optimize the quality of that, you see, briefly. And then I was in sound transfer from like 1989 until about I was in there till about 1998, and then I went into a different department, which was the audio QC department in DVD, and eventually we were transferred over to Blu-ray, and then retired in 2011.
One of the crown jewels in my home video collection is the Fantasia anthology. Did you happen to work on that at all?
Yeah, I think I did what you call audio QC. We didn't do any video QC at all. We just received the picture master and the sound, like it's like receiving a complete DVD or a Blu-ray disc, and then we have to check out the sound, all the different languages, to make sure that each language is in sync and make sure that all the channels are in the correct configuration.
This is so fascinating to me, I have to tell you. This
Good.
is like a peek behind the curtain, and this is just amazing for me. Before I let you go, I'd like to just ask you a few less technical questions. So, were you a Twilight Zone fan when this opportunity first came your way?
Well, I hadn't seen very many episodes because I don't ever recall seeing them in England in the early 60s, at the time when they were being shown over here, because I think a lot of those shows were kind of considered frightening. So they're kind of shy of British television at the time, because they didn't show a lot of shows that they considered frightening for children. You see, so with things like Outer Limits and Twilight Zone and Thriller, I don't remember seeing those because I lived in the London area, and I don't ever recall seeing any of those shows transmitted at the time they were available over here. Although I would read about them in Famous Monsters of Filmland, which I was collecting at the time as a child. So that was my only contact. Sorry.
So you came into that project not terribly familiar with the show. So that must have been a really interesting experience to kind of approach these, without, say, for example, like if it were me, I've already seen these things 100 times.
Yeah.
So to come into that, I mean, you're discovering it as you're working on it. And that's kind of amazing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like, I would say, like, most of the shows I hadn't seen before, except, because when I was doing the earlier episodes, before the definitive side, I was only doing the sound, and I didn't have any picture to work with. I didn't need it, you see.
Right.
So I guess I hadn't seen any of the episodes. But you see, when I was working on the Twilight Zone, I was supervising the black and white, and then I knew how I knew what black and white should look like.
Sure.
You see, with that perfect, try and get a perfect grayscale as possible and as much detail as you can out of the film without kind of destroying it with too much light on the image. It's a little difficult to explain.
Sure.
But,
I remember when I first got that season 1 definitive set. And I mean, again, this is a show that I had really been obsessed with for a long time. I had seen these episodes dozens and dozens of times. It was like I was seeing them for the first time. They were so beautifully rendered. I couldn't have imagined that they could look that good. So I mean, thank you for all that work. Because
well, you see, those were so professionally photographed, just like feature films. They were like feature film level photography, and a lot of those older transfers, when they were, telecined, they seemed to be like washed out, or they didn't have a lot of detail in them. And I think they were only using like 60mm prints. I mean, nothing against 60mm prints, but if they're not done like you're seeing now, it would be a shame. It would have been a shame, you see, because all the detail is there right in the original camera negative. It's fantastic. It'd be a shame not to have brought all that out.
Right. They are beautiful. In fact, when the Blu-rays came out, and I of course snapped those up, I've held on to those definitive DVD sets. They're just amazing, and I didn't keep the original DVDs, the individually numbered ones. I got rid of those at some point, but I kept those definitive DVDs, even though I had the Blu-rays. There's just so much there. It's just, like I said, it's my favorite show of all time. So, well, Stephen, it has been an honor talking with you. I think all of my listeners would agree that we owe you a great debt for the work that you've done on the show. So thank you for that.
Yeah, believe me, it's a collaborative thing, because I do give a lot of credit to Dennis Rood and Bruce Venezia, because without their faith in me, I wouldn't have had this opportunity to do this. And I don't know I'm not quite sure how it would have been done. It would have been done unsupervised. And I know at the beginning, a lot of them that were being unsupervised had to be redone because they were kind of a little bit blown out. And that's something I did not want to happen. So we redid a few, and then I gradually had to catch up, because I was redoing some of the episodes and still doing the ones that I was working on at the time. Right. Okay, but I want to make that clear. So I appreciate your thanks, but I just just wanted to make absolutely sure that you understood that it was a collaborative thing, and all that a lot of the credit does go to Dennis and Bruce for letting me do this and having their faith in me to do the job.
I don't know if they're listening. I kind of doubt it, but if they are, thanks to you gentlemen as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, very important.
Us fans are eternally grateful. So.
Yeah, thanks, Craig.
All right. Well, Stephen, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on the show, and maybe we'll talk again sometime.
Yes, thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Stephen.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
How cool was that? Seriously, what a great guy. So back to The Four of Us Are Dying. Archhammer is played by Harry Towns, one of those character actors who shows up in just about every classic TV show of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We just saw him as the district attorney in Shadow Play a couple of weeks back. You can also find him on Star Trek, The Fugitive, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, One Step Beyond, Night Gallery. He also had a memorable role in the Outer Limits episode Obit, or OBIT, in which he played a conflicted scientist who ultimately blows the whistle on an alien invasion plot.
I literally drove her away from me. And it finally happened. She was driven to someone else. I could see that she was serious about him. But I couldn't tell who he was. I would sit in front of the machine and tune in her image. I could see her clear as crystal, but no matter what I did, I couldn't pick up his image. Well, I discovered who the one person was on the center who never appeared on the screen. And I found out why. He had seen to it that his wavelength was outside the operating limits of OBIT.
So it was impossible for you to bring in this person's signal?
I finally did. Accidentally. By violating the machine's operating instructions.
My first exposure to Harry Towns was on The Incredible Hulk in 1981, where he played a man who, like David Banner, was cursed with a monstrous alter ego thanks to gamma radiation poisoning.
Clive He fixed it, you know, this thing. He stopped it. He cured it.
But how can you be sure Clive's dead?
I can be sure. It wasn't Clive who was the thing. It was me. He did it to me. I was just like you.
Archhammer's borrowed faces are all brought to life by Twilight Zone veterans. Johnny Foster is played by Ross Martin, Lieutenant Mason from the Season 4 episode Death Ship, which is one of my all-time favorite episodes, and co-stars my all-time favorite TZ actor, Jack Klugman.
We're not going to crash. Because we already have crashed.
What are you talking about?
Stop fighting it, Captain. You're all out of explanations. There's only one left and you know it.
I know nothing of the kind.
Oh, yes, you do. Carter was home. That telegram was really there. I was with my wife and my daughter because I'm just like them now.
No.
Accept it, Captain. Stop trying to prove that we're alive.
Oh, you're alive. There's something happening here. I don't know what it is, but there's an explanation for it.
I've given you the explanation.
I don't accept it! We're gonna go over it again until I find the answer.
Can't you see that's what we've been doing? Going over it again. Let us go, Paul.
No.
We're dead, Paul. Let us die.
Ooh, bit of a spoiler there. I assume anybody listening to this already knows the ending of Death Ship, right? Virgil Sterrig is played by Philip Pine, who will come back for Season 4's The Incredible World of Horace Ford. Plus, he plays the Vice President in the 100 Days of the Dragon episode of The Outer Limits.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are witness to the most monstrous act of international espionage in modern history. A few nights ago, an attempt was made on my life. It failed. Tonight, a second attempt was made. It, too, failed. Thanks to Mr. Summers, who's been at my side since the first attempt. But we have uncovered something far more treacherous than just an attempt on my life. Through a new and almost incredible chemical process, this enemy has succeeded in altering the human face, as you can see. This man is not Ted Pearson. I am Ted Pearson, yet he is the exact image of me. But there is more. Far more.
More changing faces stuff. Interesting. Moving on. Andy Marshak is played by Don Gordon, who did 2 Outer Limits episodes, The Invisibles and Second Chance. And he's in another Twilight Zone episode, but let's put a pin in that for just a bit.
Oh, hey, Johnny, I love you. Hey, Johnny. You put me back together again, Johnny, and I love you. I love you, Martin.
That's Beverly Garland as Maggie. She'd cross paths with Rod Serling again on his post-Twilight Zone series, The Loner, which we just talked about last week. You'll find her in the episode Incident in the Middle of Nowhere.
No, I don't want her hurt anymore.
You can't protect her for the rest of her life. She's got to know the truth about her father sooner or later.
Please, don't.
Better sooner.
No.
You love her very much, don't you?
I'm her mother. We were a mistake. The only mistake he ever made, according to Wilton. That was back in Abilene. He was a handsome touring young actor at the Opera House until...
Until what?
All that really matters is that when Wendy was born, he took her away from me. And he told me he'd kill me if I ever told anyone about us. Now I've told you.
And yes, in case you were wondering...
That chick that won't quit. It's like stacked, like beautiful.
You got me straight tripping, boo.
She's gorgeous. And speaking of the Twilight Zone Blu-rays, you'll find an interview with her in the Season 1 set.
Well, my reaction was, gee, that's too bad that I'm only going to be in the first little Meshuggah. That's too bad. But my other reaction was, I knew I was going to play with Ross Martin, who is one of my favorite people. I think he's a wonderful actor. And my other reaction was that I was very scared because I had to sing and play the piano. Well, I couldn't play the piano. But they said, that's all right. You don't have to play the piano. You won't really see your hands, but you will have to sing. And I'm not really a singer. And although I've done a lot of shows where I've had to sing, which scares me to death. But anyway, it was the best thing. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done. And it's so little. I mean, it's a tiny little part.
That is worth the purchase right there. Flash forward about 4 years to January 17th, 1964. The Twilight Zone presents another individual with an uncanny ability somewhat similar to Arch Hammer's, but he doesn't just mimic traits from others, he trades pieces of himself for them. The whole thing is basically an allegory about the evils of bartering and the wondrous glory of wealth acquisition. Okay, not really. The episode is the Self-Improvement of Salvadore Ross, which, like The Four of Us Are Dying, originated as a short story, only this one was published. Henry Slessor's tale appeared in the May 1961 issue of the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. It was adapted for The Twilight Zone by Jerry McNeely, his only one, and directed by Don Siegel. Not his only one, he directed 2 episodes, which doesn't sound terribly impressive, but hey, he directed the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 1956, so his sci-fi cred is irrefutable. The differences between the short story and the episode are negligible, so I'm not going to read it to you. Story time is over, brats. Salvadore Ross is aggressively courting Leah. It's not a matter of love, it's a matter of possession. He makes no attempt to hide it either. I want her, he unabashedly tells Leah's disapproving father. Leah, however, has standards when it comes to choosing a mate, and the crude and directionless Sal doesn't quite measure up.
I meant what I said the last time, Sal.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. We can't keep seeing each other. I should never let it have gotten started in the first place.
Sure. As long as you're the saintly social worker and I'm one of the crumbs, everything's all right. But as soon as we get too close, why, then you notice I got dirt on my hands.
That has nothing to do with
And that I don't talk like your old man.
Sal, we're just 2 people who are never going to understand each other.
Maybe. With your education, you can come up with a better Dear John than that.
Sal angrily punches a wall after she breaks things off with him and ends up in the hospital with a broken hand. He's kept overnight for some reason. Did a broken bone really require an overnight hospital stay in the 60s? And he's sharing a room with an old man with the flu.
I've got this awful congestion in my chest.
Are you griping about a cold?
At your age, it might just be a cold. But at mine, it could easily turn into pneumonia. You know, young man, you could break both legs in an elbow, and you'd still be swimming inside of a month.
Yeah? Well, if you think this is so great, well, let's swap. You take my busted hand, and I'll take your lousy cold.
That's a deal.
That's a cute little exchange, innocent enough. We've probably made similar deals at some point, knowing, of course, that it's just a joke, and that reality doesn't really work that way. However, for Salvadore Ross, it apparently does, because sometime during the night, he is shocked and delighted to find that his hand has miraculously been healed. But he now has a bad cold. Now, the old man objects. His new broken hand will never heal given his advanced age. Sal decrees no takebacks. Sal then uses his new talent to systematically improve himself. He sells his youth for a vast fortune, then regains it by buying time from others 1 year at a time. Soon he's young again, but still quite rich, and back on Leah's scent. She's still not interested, though, seeing as how he lacks the non-material qualities that she prizes most.
I wish I could explain it to you. It's not something that you can buy. Are you gentle? Are you kind? The man I marry is going to have compassion because otherwise I won't be able to love him.
You mean like your stupid old man who rushes up eager to get pushed around?
Yes, I think my father's a compassionate man. He cares about people just because they're people. That's the kind of man I'm talking about.
Sal goes to see Leah's father.
You've got something I want to buy, and I'm prepared to offer you $100,000 for it.
What do I have that's worth that kind of money?
Well, it's a little hard to explain.
When we next see Sal, he's a changed man. Leah sees the change and relents. He is the man she wants after all. Her father will have none of it and pulls a gun on Sal.
I'm asking you for forgiveness, for compassion.
Compassion? Don't you remember? I sold it to you yesterday.
The Self-Improvement of Salvadore Ross is one of the better offerings of the 5th season, despite the ridiculously implausible and confusing ending. Leah is convinced that Sal has evolved into a man worthy of her love. In a single day? Sal's proven himself to be a manipulative bastard in the past. She has no reason whatsoever to think that he's not simply putting on an act. Why does Sal ask Mr. Maitland for compassion when he knows for a fact that he no longer possesses it? Does the acquisition of the compassion somehow impair his memory? And if Mr. Maitland is the upright, saintly type we've been led to believe he is, why would he ever sell his compassion, his defining honorable trait, to anybody, especially a slimeball like Sal? It's sloppy and expedient. It turns the episode into a one-note punchline. But if there's one thing I do like about the ending, it's that it serves as a nice bookend for Season 1's The Four of Us Are Dying, which also ends with Don Gordon getting shot by an old man. But that ending was organic, and it jibed with the events that preceded it. I guess we can argue that cosmic justice is indeed served by Sal getting blown away, but at what cost? A good man, Mr. Maitland, is now a soulless shell of a man, and will almost certainly go to prison for murder. And the innocent Leah just lost the man she loves and her father in one shot. If this is cosmic justice, it's hugely skewed. The mechanics of Sal's deal-making are a bit inconsistent. The first trade happens during the night when Sal and the old man are asleep. We don't see most of the other trades, so we don't know how those go down, but the one where he buys his youth back from an elevator operator, that happens during the elevator ride. He goes in old, comes out young, and then we get that really great shot of the kid holding the check, except that he's not a kid anymore, he's an old man. A rich old man. It is a really effective bit, but it muddies the water a little bit. Does Sal control when each trade actually takes effect, or is it just sort of random? In the short story, the trades always kick in during the night when the principals are asleep. The Self-Improvement of Salvadore Ross is a textbook example of how the Twilight Zone changed between its 1st and 5th seasons. Season 1 is the young, eager upstart working overtime to prove itself, and Season 5 is the listless, middle-aged cynic who just wants to put in his time and take a goddamn nap. This isn't just evident in the tired, derivative stories. You also see it in the production design and cinematography. When compared directly against The Four of Us Are Dying, Salvadore Ross is plain boring. There's no spark, no interesting cinematography. It's as vanilla as it gets. It serves as a bookend to The Four of Us simply by virtue of the similar core idea, a man who can change himself at will, more or less anyway. Your pal Sal needs the additional step of a verbal agreement to make it happen. Plus, both episodes end with Don Gordon getting blown away by paternal figures. How cool would it have been if the same love and attention and restless creativity had been lavished on Salvadore Ross? It's got a stock score. They even could have reused the Goldsmith cues from The Four of Us, tilted the camera here and there, splashed on some shadows. If you drench it in the same type of impressionistic jazzy vibe, the shortcomings of the story could be written off as dream logic. It's kind of a free pass deal. You can get away with a ton of shit under that umbrella. As it stands, there's no energy, there's no fizz. It's got no style, man. But the episode is still entertaining, thanks largely to a great cast and the clever story, up till that ending, I mean. In the lead as Sal is Don Gordon in his second visit to the Twilight Zone.
Well, I've got a Christmas morning surprise for you, baby. It works that way with me. I can be anything I want. I can buy anything I want.
Nothing in my research suggests that he was cast because of the similarities of his two episodes, but again, if they'd patterned the production after The Four of Us Are Dying, it would have made for a great approximate reprise of the Arch Hammer character.
I've thought a lot about it. Although I realize that you are what you are, and it's not my place to judge you.
Oh, look, I don't care what you think about me.
I cannot let you ruin her life by marrying her.
Leah's father is played by Vaughn Taylor, a member of the Five Timers Club. He was in 4 other episodes, none of which we've covered yet on the podcast. Time Enough at Last in Season 1, Still Valley and I Sing the Body Electric, both in Season 3, and The Incredible World of Horace Ford in Season 4, which also co-starred Philip Pine. He also did 2 episodes of The Outer Limits, The Guests, and Expanding Human.
Oh, please. No, I want to swap back. Please. Look, it'll never heal, not at my age.
The Old Man in the Hospital is played by J. Pat O'Malley, who did 3 other Twilight Zones. The Chaser in Season 1, The Fugitive in Season 3, and Mr. Garrity and the Graves in Season 5. And hey, here's a cool, fairly obscure trivia item. The hospital nurse is played by Kathleen O'Malley, his daughter.
I won't stay out late. And I would like to hear about everything that's been happening to you. Just give me a couple of minutes to change.
Gail Kobe plays Leah Maitland. We last saw her in A World of Difference, and she'll come back for In His Image in Season 4. Like Don Gordon and Vaughn Taylor, she also did 2 stints on The Outer Limits, Specimen Unknown, and the wonderfully hysterical Keeper of the Purple Twilight.
Oh, you must be joking.
What is joking?
Oh, Icar, just when I think I'm beginning to understand you, you say something like, what is joking? You say so many strange things, like orderly society, perfect body, same brain. What are you trying to make of us? A race of insects like those? They're ugly creatures, mindless and soulless, rushing about moving dirt from one place to another.
They serve a purpose?
Well, true, but whose? Certainly not their own, since they don't accomplish anything to help themselves. Years and years of industry, and they're still insects. Well, surely you wouldn't like to see us like that, would you?
She gave up acting in the mid-70s to work behind the scenes on several different soap operas. She was a supervising producer on The Edge of Night, a full-on producer on The Bold and the Beautiful, and an assistant producer on Teresa's favorite, Days of Our Lives.
Hey, you used to watch it too.
Whatever. Readers of my blog will know that I have quite a crush on her. I mean, Gail Kobe, not Teresa.
Hey!
Look, there's a difference between a crush from afar and a marriage, so let me alone. Anyway, Gail Kobe is totally adorable and lights up everything she appears in, so of course she qualifies as a TZ babe.
That chick that won't quit. It's like stacked, like beautiful.
You got me straight tripping, boo.
Such a pig.
You see what I deal with, folks. The Self-Improvement of Salvadore Ross is pretty good. It's better than many Season 5 episodes. It's got a great cast of familiar Twilight Zone faces, and it's fun despite its abrupt and unsatisfying conclusion. If we could just take a page from Sal's book and trade that ending for a different one. You throw it in the ring with The Four of Us Are Dying, however, and it winds up face down on the blood-splattered canvas in a matter of seconds. The Four of Us Are Dying wins by a knockout in the first round. Back when I covered the pilot episode of The Twilight Zone,
Where is everybody?
I mentioned that Nine Inch Nails has a song with the same name. Now, that one may not have been directly inspired by the episode, since the phrase, "Where is everybody?" could come from any number of places. However, Nine Inch Nails also has a track called The Four of Us Are Dying, which is a much more, specific title. Esoteric, unique. So this one has to have been named in honor of the episode. It's an instrumental, so there aren't any lyrics to refer to, but I'm still calling it a direct Twilight Zone inspiration. So that's it for this week. If you want to get a hold of us, here's how you do it. If you're on Facebook and Tumblr, search for @ZonePod, ZONEPOD. If you eschew social media but do use email because you can't really survive without email in these modern times, you can drop us a line at zonepod@gmail.com. And hey, if you're on iTunes, please leave us a rating and or a review. I keep asking and y'all keep not doing it. I'm starting to take it a bit personally. If you follow this podcast in real time, you know that this episode is being released a few days late. We've had some inclement weather crap, which threw a serious monkey wrench into the time I had set aside to work on this episode. Last Wednesday afternoon, the snow accumulated so fast that I ended up having to abandon my car midway home and taking the train. It took me over 4 hours to get home that night. So that evening was basically shot, and with it, any hopes that this episode would be ready on time. Keep in mind, Christmas is next weekend, so I've got a lot of holiday-type stuff I've got to get done. I wasn't able to retrieve my car for 2 days, so yeah, I've had some shit going on. And unfortunately, the schedule is now all out of whack for the rest of the year. There's no way I'm going to be able to put together the Christmas episode I was planning. There will still be something. It just won't be the big extravaganza I was hoping for, but there'll definitely be something. Maybe a stocking-sized treat instead of a big wrapped present under your podcast tree. And it's a strictly BYOHC affair. Bring your own hot chocolate. Or, something with a bit more kick. And me, I can't get through the holidays without semi-regular potent potable infusions. So just know that I'll be buzzing when next we meet. Until then, kids, play nice.
Between light and shadow.
Yes, I'm the real hammer. Swap out my face to stay out of the slammer. So want the real arch hammer, please stand up. Please stand up. Please stand up. I'm Arch Hammer, yes, I'm the real hammer. Shifting my shape, causing all kinds of clamor. So want the real arch hammer, please stand up.